I don't know about you, but I kind of feel I need a week to go off somewhere and hide in a corner and just kind of appropriate already what we're unfolding. So I want to thank all those who are taking part and sharing in this experience. And most especially, I think there's always that focus of what we take from here and go forth to bring to others. I said a little bit about Father Stephen last night, but just a little kind of background information. Father Stephen grew up in Hertfordshire, in a town called Harpenden. They must have done something extraordinary in the water there, because over the last 25 years in the Diocese of Westminster, they've had 3 priests ordained from that one parish. So there must be some extraordinarily holy people there, praying and sacrificing and doing extraordinary things that have brought forth those fruits. I often looked at that parish and thought, you know, if we had the secret, we could, but of course it's the mystery of God, isn't it? So from Harpenden, after university and some further study in Blackfriars in Oxford, in philosophy and theology, he then, at that point, decided that he wanted to offer himself for the priesthood, so trained in Rome, and then came to a parish in the diocese in northwest London, in Dollis Hill, as a deacon to begin with. And that's where I first really met Stephen, because I was in the neighbouring parish as an assistant priest. So we used to meet together at deanery meetings and groan to one another, and then meet occasionally just in the area and talk about ministry and the transition from formation into public ministry in the church, and how you hold on to a kind of self-care, how you continue to keep a focus on the Lord and on what you're doing in terms of your love and service of people. So lovely experience there. And then Father Stephen was asked to go and do some further study in Cambridge, and to did a doctorate there on the theme, believe it or not, of Aquinas and Sartre. So St. Thomas Aquinas, the greatest church's theologian in many ways, and Sartre, the famous French philosopher, existential philosopher. So if you think none of those who those two have nothing in common, then Stephen's written a very, very beautiful book, and at the heart of it is an exploration of desire, and how these two individuals from two different parts of the church, of the life of civilization in Europe, yet share something extraordinary, which is that this human desire and capacity we have is transcendent, and it's there in every person. So it gives you a sense, I think, just that symbol of the capacity of Father Stephen to bring together worlds which seem to be opposed to one another, and which are sometimes set up as being in conflict with one another. I don't want to embarrass him, but I believe he's one of the most creative minds we have in the church in this country at this time. And I'm very grateful that he's agreed to be with us. So the morning's given over to him. After that study, he went to Allen Hall, and then I had the great privilege of going on the staff at Allen Hall. So we lived in the same house and worked together in that work of priestly formation for 4 years. And then after that, Father Stephen was asked to go as chaplain to the University of London, and he's now in his second year doing that. The University of London covers something like 20 separate colleges, so he works with a staff of between 15 and 20 chaplains, priests, religious lay people, in the vast diversity of the kind of different colleges and the different kind of traditions. And alongside that has a great experience of working and supporting those who are working in evangelisation in whatever field, whether that's in prayer groups, Youth 2000, in the media. He's chaplain to a group called Catholic Voices, if you know that group, that try to be a presence in the world of media in terms of, I suppose, positively presenting our faith and engaging with our culture in that regard. So I think he's a person who's well able to unpack for us something of what is at the heart of evangelisation, and I'm sure you'll give him a warm welcome, and I'm sure that we'll take many riches from what he has to say. Father Stephen.
Do these lights go on? So I can come on the spot. I'll collapse the whole stage here. So that's better, David. That's better. Good morning. Very, very nice to be with you. Thank you for those kind words, Bishop Mark. You're all terrified now you're going to get a lecture about French existentialism. But the first thing I've got to do is correct your bishop. It's a bit cheeky, isn't it? We've had 5 ordinations in the last 20 years. He's only counting the 3 Westminster dioceses. But we've had someone who moved away from our parish to another diocese, and we've had a Dominican, a young Dominican as well. So yes, there is something in the water in our middle, and we're very proud of it. So look, it's really great to have this time together, and to be thinking about evangelisation and what it means for us, and especially for our different communities, most of you meaning the parish communities. And just to say what I'm not doing, I'm not going to give a systematic presentation of the theology of evangelisation. You all know this, you've been hearing it from popes for the last 50 years. We've been reading and studying it in Evangelii Gaudium, and if you don't know it, I gather there is a wonderful pamphlet in your packs that you can read about. But also, I'm not going to give you strategies and tips about evangelisation in your parishes. I don't feel that's going to be helpful at this stage, because what I want to do is to look at the movement of evangelisation within one's own heart, really, and how that shapes what we are all doing, but in very, very different ways. So it's to kind of go into the heart of evangelisation, what it means, especially for us as communities. So it's not really about how can I, as an individual, evangelise. That's a really important topic. But I think what we're doing at this conference is thinking about our communities, our dioceses, our parishes especially. So I've got 2 blocks of time with you, 40 minutes or so now. I'm going to get the watch out, otherwise it'll be 3 hours. It's 9:30. So then some chat, then some coffee, and then another session with some more input. And in the second session, I'm going to talk about attitudes of the heart that we need as evangelisers, as evangelising communities. But in this first session now, I want to look at, as I've said, the movement of evangelisation. And I'm calling it a double movement, a movement out and in. And that's what I'm going to think about a little bit now. But first of all, let's just recognise evangelisation is not tidy. It's not easy to say, here is evangelisation, this is what it is, and we can spot it and see it and do it. It's not easy, it's not tidy. And just to choose, just look at the contrast between 2 of the most significant moments of evangelisation in the history of our country. Just 2 little moments, 2 little anecdotes. Just think first of Roman Britain in the 3rd century, probably the early 3rd century, when a priest known as Amphibolus is being hunted by the authorities, chased through the streets of the Roman town of Verulamium, just a few miles north of London, taking refuge in the house of a Roman soldier called Alban. Now you're thinking, I know the story. These two men, forced into such unexpected proximity as this soldier, his compassion really, opening his home, his heart, risking his life to protect this man. And through this encounter, a moment of sharing of faith, of Alban seeing the priest's prayer, his witness, eventually talking, eventually proclaiming the gospel, eventually a moment of conversion so that Alban asks to be baptized there in his own home. And the well-known story that I don't need to recount to you of the police, the soldiers, coming to the door, and instead of giving up the priest, Alban shoving him out the back door, taking the priest's cloak and going to the front door to allow himself to be arrested in his place, taken to interrogation, refusing to deny his faith, and being beheaded on the hill outside of the city of Verulamium, which we now call the great city of St. Albans. But contrast that with another defining moment of evangelisation in our country, St. Augustine arriving in the Kingdom of Kent in 597 to convert the pagan king Ethelbert, sent by no less a figure than Pope Gregory the Great, bringing with him all the resources available to Christian mission, a monastic community, liturgical books, illuminated manuscripts of the Holy Bible, an icon of Christ, a processional crucifix, marching to meet the king, a kind of international symposium of mission. You know these stories. I'm not telling you them because you don't know them, but just what's interesting is to see them together. My point is to show the contrast and how untidy and undefinable evangelisation is. Because the first moment, Alban, is unplanned, accidental. It grew out of disaster. There were no resources and no strategies other than the witness of faith of a single persecuted individual. His witness, his openness, and his willingness to share his faith in an unexpected moment with an unexpected stranger. But the second, Augustine and his entourage, must be one of the best planned and most strategized and best resourced missions in Christian history. Years of preparation, huge networks of collaboration and money and letters across Europe, leading to the arrival of a mighty task force and a long-term commitment to plant the faith in pagan Kent, and from there to spread the faith throughout the kingdoms of the British Isles. As I've said, my point is, evangelisation isn't tidy. It's not one external form or programme over another. It's the Lord using different people in radically different ways and circumstances to witness to the Catholic faith and to invite others to share in that faith. So even before I start speaking, as it were, let's just shake the dust out of our heads. Let's stop thinking this is about making a big plan and just start, as it were, from an empty sheet of paper. How can we look at this together, though? Well, I'm going to look this morning, just in this first session, at one example of an evangelisation project, which by coincidence, and it is a coincidence, is the project that Father Mark was speaking briefly about last night, which is night fever. I want to say again, though, I'm choosing this as a symbol of what's going on in the evangelising heart. And not because I'm proposing it to you as some kind of ideal that we should all be copying. Because it's a very specific project that works in some places and not others. So don't get hung up on the he's going on about night fever thing. Yes? I want you to listen and enter into what's going on in the heart of this project. That's why I'm choosing it. So just to repeat, because some of you weren't here last night, and in case you haven't come across it, this is such a simple idea, started in Cologne for World Youth Day in 2005, to open a city centre church on a busy weekend evening, and to invite people in to visit and to pray. So just for me at the university chaplaincy and our students, this means meeting on a Saturday evening at the chaplaincy. We're right there in the heart of the university district, near to Bloomsbury and to Euston. And a group of us, maybe 8, 10, 12, we walk down the road to St Patrick's Church in Soho Square. Now this is one of the most beautiful churches in London, in one of the least salubrious parts of our country, Soho. And for this whole project, and it's true in many cities where it takes place throughout the world, beauty is the key ingredient. The beauty of the church building itself. The transcendent sacramental beauty of the Blessed Sacrament exposed on the altar. Simple things, the candles, the lighting, the banners, the welcome, in such a way as to create an atmosphere of prayer and contemplation. A music group playing gently all evening. Teams of people committed to praying through the night. The beauty of their prayer itself, and the beauty of the witness of them praying. Not to show off, but to show that prayer is something that we do, and that can be seen and touched. And priests scattered around the back and the edges of the church for confession, but more than that, for counsel, for prayer, for conversation, for comfort. And then, crucially, a team of people going out in pairs to the square, to Soho Square itself. Each pair carrying a lantern to make them identifiable and to create curiosity. You need a gimmick if you're going to evangelise. And remember, this is the theatre district, the cinema district, the nightclub district, and still, sadly, the red light district of central London. Thousands of people walking by, invited in, but they're invited in a very, very low-key, unthreatening, open-ended way. Simply, hi, do you want to just come and light a candle and visit the church? A line as simple as that. And if they say yes, and many do, to lead this person, this group, to the front of the church, to give them a candle that they can light, even without saying you have to pray, but just to give them something to do and hold and see, and then inviting them, if they wish, to pray for something that's on their heart, to take a Bible passage from a basket with pieces of paper on at the front of the church, to sit in silence, to take as little or as long as they want there in the church, and if they want, to have a word with someone, with one of the team, with one of the welcomers, with one of the priests. That's all. A beautiful, prayerful church, a gentle, humble, loving invitation. That's all. It's hard to measure grace, but you can measure candles. what the team does is count the number of metal candles that are left, tea lights. And on average, there's 300, 400, 500 candles left in the church at the end of the evening. That's just the number of people who've gone to the front to light candles. You can't measure grace, but as a priest, you can, as it were, measure the conversations that you have. And I can testify, as a priest sitting there for 3 hours on an average Saturday evening, to the remarkable moments of grace that I've seen in people's lives who would not have been there if this opportunity hadn't been offered. Catholics coming back to confession after many, many years with huge burdens on their heart and their conscience, alienated from the church, being reconciled with Christ and with the church, not because they'd planned to, but because someone with a lantern had said, "Do you want to come into the church to light a candle?" Lapsed, indifferent, agnostic, ordinary types sitting down to have a conversation saying, "I used to go to church." Ordinary people of absolutely no faith, absolutely none, sitting down with the priest, with me, with others, with the prayer team, asking for prayer, asking for a blessing, hardly knowing what a blessing means, but seeing me do this to give absolution to people in the queue before. Remarkable moments of grace, just because of an open door, a beautiful, prayerful place, and a humble, gentle invitation. So what's the movement here? This was my phrase, wasn't it? What are the two movements of evangelisation that we see illustrated? First, it's the going out. Going out into the streets. And again, I'm going to keep saying this. This is a symbol. When you think about what I'm saying, I don't mean literally into the streets, because this works for night fever. But what does going out mean for you and your communities? Does it mean into the streets? Does it mean into your friend's home? Does it mean into the schools? Does it mean into the internet? I don't know what it means, but it means something. As Pope Francis never tires of telling us, and I quote from one of the most powerful passages of Evangelii Gaudium 49, "Let us go forth to offer everyone the life of Jesus Christ. I prefer a church which is bruised, hurting and dirty, because it has been out in the streets, rather than a church that is unhealthy from being confined and from clinging to its own security." And a beautiful chapter in Evangelii Gaudium, just with the title, "Go Forth." Do you remember that? Lots of stories, biblical stories, of the Lord saying, "Go forth. Go forth to Abraham. Go forth to Moses. Go forth to the apostles and the disciples. Go out, go forth. Go to the peripheries." And the risks and the dangers, but how important this is, to leave the security and the familiarity of what we are used to as practicing Catholics, and to be prepared for the untidy, dirty, unpredictableness of going out, whatever that means for us. And the constant haunting risk, not just of accidents and confusion, but of failure. Not just, this is hard, but I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know if this is going to work. But that's what we need. We can't expect people to just turn up. They're not turning up, are they? They're not. It's wonderful to say we need to open our church doors more. Yeah? And I think you're going to hear more about that later. If only our churches could be open more. But it's not enough, because people won't know they're open. And they're not going to come in unless they have an invitation. It's wonderful to put posters up, to redesign the website and the notice board and whatever, but that's not an invitation from one heart to another heart. It's not a conversation. It's not actually a welcome, a personal welcome. It's not enough just expecting people to turn up. Part of evangelisation is always going out, seeking others, inviting them. As I keep saying, whatever form that means for you as an individual and for you in your parishes and your dioceses, because it will vary enormously and it might look nothing like night fever, but something that makes us go out. Random examples here. The neo-catechumenic communities, and how every Lent they will have a street mission as part of their witness. Literally to go out into the streets, to talk to people, to share their life, to hand out leaflets about the local churches and the times for prayer and catechesis. The many parish evangelisation programmes, like Catholic Alpha, like the Cafe DVDs, like the different theology courses that are available, but I'm not talking about them as programmes, I'm talking about the invitations that are part of that programme. The traditional Legion of Mary, wonderful work of the Legion of Mary, our greatest ever missionary association, knocking on doors to talk about faith and about people's challenges and to welcome and invite them to prayer and to the church. More modern types of evangelisation than the Legion, like Faith on Tap, imported from the States, where events are put on not in churches or church halls, but pubs and clubs and bars and cafes and restaurants. So that instead of having to cross the scary threshold into a religious place, religion crosses the threshold into the world, but to have some kind of encounter. The very fact of public Catholicism, of public faith, processions, the wonderful tradition of processions in our Catholic faith, which sort of died down in the last few decades and has been rejuvenated and re-energised in the last 10 or 15 years. Processions isn't about self-indulgence or arrogance, it's about evangelisation, witness, about saying there's something beautiful here, there's something to be shared. It is not just for me and you and us, it's for them. We have this as part of our tradition. It needs rediscovering and remodelling and even reinventing. But what does it mean to take our faith from the church sanctuary out into the streets and the marketplaces of our towns and villages? Wasn't it interesting that after Pope Benedict's wonderful trip to the UK just a few years ago, part of the confidence that it renewed in the whole church, and especially in our bishops, was that it's okay to be Catholic in public. And the title of their renewal programme after the Pope's visit was Confidently Catholic. And you remember it was much discussed, and of course it divided many communities. But for me, the beautiful decision to reintroduce Friday abstinence. It's a small thing, it's not the focus of Christian life, there's much more important things. But the church saying to us, in some small way, we need to do something together as a community. In some small, symbolic way, we need to let go of something as a sign of penance. In a way that will actually touch our lives, and not that we wear a badge about it, but might impact on our day and our relationships. It's a tiny thing, but just a very powerful thing. And I hope you've felt in small ways that it's touched you, it's made you think, it's opened up conversations. And one of Cardinal Vincent Nichols' public things, I don't think this was national, this was just to the diocese, he said, after the Pope's visit, let's remember the tradition of grace before meals. Do that at the kitchen table, that's hard enough to remember. But yes, If you're in Starbucks or McDonald's, have the courage to pray before you eat. And maybe it will help others to see something very small about the importance of prayer and the importance of your Catholic faith. Just one little anecdote, just because it's on my mind from Christmas. In the chaplaincy this year, we did the blessing of the Epiphany chalk thing. Yes? So this isn't an English tradition, it's a Central European tradition where you bless chalk and then you take the chalk home and you write somewhere on your door frame or on your door. This year it would have been 20, let me get the letters the right way round, CMB 15. So you've got 2015, the year, and in the middle, CMB, representing the prayers of the wise men, Caspar, Melchior, Balthazar, in their traditional names, but also CMB representing Christus mansionem benedicat. May Christ bless this home. So you're taking blessed chalk and you're asking the Lord, Jesus, to bless this home in this year. We broke up the chalk, we blessed it, we gave it to the students, we gave them a prayer, and I said, you don't have to. If you're terrified, write it on the inside door of your student. Yeah? But please, pray about it. Have the courage to write it on the outside door, in your hall of residence, in your flat. And your friends will ask you, what the hell is that? And even the sign on the front of my office door, it got washed away by our domestic cleaner because he thought it was graffiti. So I came back and I said to him the next day, Carlos, where's my chalk gone? And he said, oh, Father Stephen, was that important? So I said, why don't you write the blessing up yourself? And he took great pride in rewriting the blessing with the blessed chalk so that it's there today, and I can show you a photo from my phone if you want to see it later. Little things, yes? And I'm only telling them for a bit of fun, and I'm not even proposing them to you. That's not important. What I'm proposing is the heart thinking, how can we go out? How can we share our faith? How can we invite? To take some risk, to use the imagination, to let the longing of the heart grow. We need to have some form of going out and inviting others. Otherwise, what we are doing is not evangelisation. Because the heart of evangelisation is the desire not just that our faith will be known, but that we will actively share that faith somehow. And for you to think what that means. Right, that's halfway through part one. Need to rest my voice, have a little sip of water. So just have 1 minute, just to change the atmosphere for a minute. What's one thought that I said that struck you? Just swap that with your neighbour. One thought that has struck you. Okay, that was just a little buzz to let me have a drink. I'm going to finish off this session, and then we have some time for group work, so there's lots of time to talk and share ideas. Right, so if we're thinking about the double movement of evangelisation, one movement of the heart and of the body is to go out. But of course, back to the example of night fever, as a symbol, the second movement, after going out to meet people, is to bring people back into the church, is to bring people in. And my key point here, very simple, is this, that you have to have something to bring them into. You have to have something to bring them into. Yes, you can go out into the streets, whatever that means symbolically for you in your outreach and your generosity, etc. Yes, it's good for a while to forget about the building and the roof and the timetables and the normal routine and all the familiar things, the plant, the familiarity. But your hope at Night Fever is, once you're out there in Soho Square, is not to stay there or for them to take you off to wherever they're going. It's to meet them in order to bring them back into the beauty of this church building for a few seconds that evening, so that they can encounter the Lord, and so that through this beauty, this witness, he can touch their lives and speak to them himself. Of course we know, this doesn't need saying, we know that his presence isn't limited to the church building. Of course not. But we do know from experience and faith and the teaching of the church that through the beauty, and in this example of Night Fever, through the sacramental presence of the Lord in the Eucharist, and through all the manifest beauty of faith and tradition and of Christian life that's present there in that church on that evening, that through this beauty, through the Lord's presence, they can experience him and encounter with him at some level that is impossible in the bars and clubs of Soho and in your hen party trip to Mamma Mia on Saturday evening. Beautiful though that might be. You go out in order to bring in, at some level. You speak in order to share something. You're not just speaking noise. You're speaking in order to share. You connect with others, emphasis on the first word, you connect with others in your going out, in order to help them connect with Christ and with his church, ultimately. Otherwise it's not evangelisation, is it? It's just you going out to meet people, which is great, but it's not evangelisation. The going out in order to bring people in to something. And again, you work out what the something is, and I'm going to do a little bit of helping you to think about that, but it will be different. It won't necessarily mean a neoclassical church in the centre of a square. The bringing into something beautiful and rich and powerful and life-changing might take many different forms. What is it? Just one, again, example of the double movement is the Freshers' Week budget at Newman House Chaplaincy. So this was last October. So we knew at the chaplaincy, we'd been thinking about this all last year and all over the summer. Pope Francis has said we need to go out into the streets. Well, great, let's go out then. But we all got a bit afraid. We thought, I can't go out naked. I need some armour. I need something to take with me. I need some resources. So half of our Freshers' Week budget went on street resources. 5,000 posters about the chaplaincy, about the work of CAPSOCs, to put in the colleges and the halls and the faculties and the laboratories of our 30 institutions in London. There are 365,000 higher education students in our Diocese of Westminster alone. Out. So trying to go out somehow. 5,000 posters, 10,000, it's a technical term this, electric yellow postcards. This is that, you know those electricity warning signs, yes? You will be electrocuted if you cross this fence. That yellow. Apparently this is like a nightclub, so the students said we can have postcards looking like nightclub flyers, but about the chaplaincy. 10,000 postcards to give out to students in the colleges and in the streets. A team of students standing on the crossroads outside Waterstone's bookshops in the University District, just near the farmers' market, that's where they go for their lunch, to invite them to come to the chaplaincy. the students, and even myself, I hope no one took a photo of this, wearing an electric yellow t-shirt advertising the university chaplaincy. Banners on the outside of the wall on the first floor, so that when the double-decker buses come past Gower Street, which they do every 7 seconds, they can see the mass times and the confession times and the times of exposition. Photos of happy students, pretending we don't have any unhappy students. Only photos of happy students, 15 feet long, outside the chaplaincy, so that they can see this is a place for you, for young people. It's a place of joy, as Pope Francis keeps saying. That was half the budget, going out. But the other half of the budget went on liturgy, furniture and hospitality. We spent the summer buying new vestments, new altar cloths, commissioning a reproduction of a beautiful medieval crucifix to hang behind the altar in the chaplaincy, and at the same time foldable, indestructible round coffee tables to sit round after Mass, new water glasses, and a set of 80 industrial strength coffee cups, so that when the students threw them on the floor, which they seemed to do, they wouldn't break and we'd have them for the following week. So going out in order to welcome people in to something, to a community of prayer and worship and friendship and eating and drinking. Because, again, forgive these kind of cliches, but publicity only works if you've got something to publicise. An invitation in the street only makes sense if you've got something to invite people back to. And so a key part of evangelisation for us is believing that we do have something as a church to bring people to and to share with others. I mean, as a church, our Catholic faith. You as a diocese here in Plymouth, you as a parish community, for you to believe that you have a treasure, a gift that's transformed your own lives and others, and that perhaps without knowing how or why, it has the power to transform and help the lives of many, many other hundreds and thousands of people in your town. And that perhaps without knowing it, this is what they are longing and searching for. Night fever, as I've said, is a symbolic illustration of this, of how we need to leave our familiar structures and ideas and buildings and go out. But there's this movement of return, of coming back in, and symbolically of rediscovering what is truly important and life-giving in our Catholic tradition, in our diocese, in our parishes, even in the building itself. Because we can forget this, can't we? We can become over-familiar with our faith and our tradition. We can either take it for granted in a lovely, homely way, but in a way that we stop thinking or caring about it, or we can imagine that we've moved beyond lots of this stuff that was good for our parents and grandparents, when actually we haven't, because we need it as much as them. We can become complacent about the gifts of our own faith. We can even become cynical. We can forget how life-giving, liberating our Catholic faith and traditions are, if only we could untap it and open it up for others. Going out, coming back in. There's no contradiction here. Because actually, the going out with great freedom, really the joy and the freedom of saying, just forget all this stuff for a minute and go out, that's what actually helps you to have a new perspective when you come back in with your friend, with this person, with this group. To see the Catholic faith from the outside, and instead of asking just, what do I happen to like, to ask, What are others searching for? And how can the richness and the beauty and the weight, the density, the life-givingness of this tradition, how can this help them in their needs and their yearnings? And of course it leads to the most fundamental question, which is not what do I want for them, or what do they think they want for themselves. The most fundamental question is, what does Christ wish to share with them? What does he wish them to discover? So let's let go of a false distinction between mission and maintenance. Some of you will remember a book was it called Mission or Maintenance? Yes? And there was great debate. We're too locked into maintenance. We need to go out and have some mission. Well, I can understand how in its time that was a helpful prod, but let's get rid of a false distinction, dichotomy between mission and maintenance. Because mission, which is essential, makes us ask, what do we really need to maintain? What is worth maintaining, and why is it still so vitally important? Pope Francis says as much. My phrase is a bit snappier than his, I think. But he says, let me quote, and it's exactly this point. After people think, oh, he's so radical, and he just wants us to go out into the streets and get dirty, which he does, yes? But just listen to the next part of this paragraph. Pope Francis says, nor should we see the newness of this mission, going to the streets, as entailing a kind of displacement or forgetfulness of the living history that surrounds us and carries us forward. Do you see that? Going out with our sleeves rolled up doesn't mean that we are forgetful of our history and our tradition and our Catholic faith. And he goes on to say, the joy of evangelising always arises from grateful remembrance. You can't just say, mission, 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 street, 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 I'm going out to say hello, if you've forgotten in the process of what you want to remember about your faith, about what makes you Catholic, about what sent you out in the first place. Going out, coming back in. Mission and a proper maintenance. But how do we know what needs maintaining? In your diocese, in your parish, fundamentally, what needs maintaining? What's essential? What is at the heart of our Catholic faith? Put it another way, how do we know in this particular evangelisation project, in this evening, in this website, in this podcast, how do we know what we are bringing people to? Well, of course, it's the gospel. Of course, it's Jesus Christ himself, it's his church. But we need a bit more than that, because that's too big. And I'd give you just one, it's not even an answer, but one direction to look in as a sort of check. So that when you're doing the what, hey, let's get together in our parish, let's bring people in, let's share our faith. When you're doing the what are we sharing, you've got some little check, some marker. And I would say, what are we maintaining? What are we sharing? The answer lies in the structure of the catechism. The structure of the catechism, in other words, the 4 parts of the catechism, the 4 pillars, as it says. And if we remember these 4 pillars, the 4 parts, constantly, in everything we do actually, this is true for catechesis, it's true for your life of faith in the domestic church at home, but it's especially true in What are we maintaining? What are we resourcing? What are we budgeting? What are we promoting in our evangelisation programme? Just remember the 4 parts of the catechism, which are, as you know, faith, sacraments, moral vision, and prayer. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would say this is the acid test of evangelisation. Well, it's 2 really, because I've given you 1, haven't I? The first acid test is, are you going out? And the second acid test is, are you bringing people back? Are you sharing the 4 pillars of the catechism in some way? I don't mean here reading the catechism, though that might help. I mean just as markers for what we're doing as a church. So, the acid test of evangelisation. First, are we bringing people to the fullness of the Catholic faith? Faith. Its beauty, its integrity. Faith. Second, are we bringing people, longing for people to share in the grace of the sacraments and the intimate union with Jesus Christ and with his church that they bring about? Not that people can't meet him in other places, but the fullness of life in Christ is only found through the sacraments of the church. This is our faith. It's not arrogance, it's not possessiveness. It's joy in the gifts that Jesus has given us. Third, the moral vision of the church. Are we helping people to see and understand and live this? Not as a set of abstract rules that we have to defend or skirt around or even undermine or be embarrassed by, but the moral teaching of the church as a way of life that gives meaning and purpose to people, that gives help and challenge in difficult situations, and that ultimately gives spiritual peace and hope to people in their complicated, difficult lives. And fourth, the 4th part of the catechism, are we bringing people into a life of prayer, simply, to a living relationship with Jesus, to help form in them a heart that loves God and loves their neighbour. The structure of the catechism, just as a signpost to the 4 gifts, or the 4 aspects of the one gift that is Jesus Christ, that is our Catholic faith. Because we all have to acknowledge, all of us, that there is a temptation when we go out to invite people into my world. Yeah? My preferences, my gospel, my version of the Catholic faith, the paragraphs of the catechism that I happen to like, my way of praying, yes? The gospel of Stephen Wang. But the real call for us as Catholics and evangelists is to invite people to Christ's church, to his gospel, to the teaching of his church, and to the life and fullness of his Catholic family. This is our mission. We'll do that in different ways, because we're all unique and individual, and we will have different insights. But we all have the common desire to share the great gift of this faith. So, to underline again, just to finish this first session, I'm not proposing a plan to you. I'm just asking a question. How can you symbolically, inverted commas, go out? And what are you bringing people back into? What are we offering them? What are we sharing? What are we ourselves living that we believe has meaning for others? And the test is whether we're going out or not, and whether we're bringing back to the 4 pillars of the catechism, of the Catholic faith, and if in small ways, very small ways, we are bringing people to faith, to the sacraments, to moral conversion, and to prayer, then we are on the right road. If we're not doing this, it might be a very, very nice experience, but it's not evangelisation. session 1. We're going to have some chat. Shall I just kick this off? Okay, we've got 10 minutes of chat. And don't move yet. Okay, you have to say don't move before you say what to do, because don't move yet. But in a minute, I'll ask you just to bunch a little bit in 3s or 4s, right? Not more. Yeah, 3s or 4s, so that you're not just sitting with your best friend. 3s or 4s, very small groups, and just think about these. You won't have time to go through them all, but here are 3 questions to provoke you if you want to make a note. But you might just want to pick one of these questions. First question. What's one idea from my sharing that has struck you? Just what's one thought that struck you? Keep that brief, just 20 seconds each. Preparing for your video experience with David afterwards. Yeah, one thought that struck you or helped you. Second, what's one fear or difficulty that gets in the way of evangelising? For you personally or for your parish? One fear or difficulty. And third, I keep saying there's no plan. What's one practical way you'd love to evangelise in your parish, but you aren't yet? In other words, out of this first session is the beginning to arise one little dream. Hey, we could do that. But I don't want to jump in too quickly to that, because this is about the heart, the attitude, rather than planning. So one thought that stands out, one fear, one practical project or plan that's emerging. And just get into your small groups now and have some chat together. Is the mic okay? Okay, great. Welcome back. So the first session, very simple, going out, bringing people back, building up relationships in order to share something and bring them to something bigger than ourselves, which is the Lord and His church. I'm going to shift a little bit now. This session, I'm just going to talk about some attitudes of the heart that we need and that we're trying to cultivate. And I'm emphasising this as individuals who are longing to evangelise in our communities, and what the attitudes of the heart of the team, of the parish, of the priest and the lay people and the religious, who have a heart for evangelisation. So, for example, I'm not saying you need to believe in Jesus, you need faith, hope and charity, etc., because they're just so obvious, and everyone needs them, don't they? So I'm not going through what it is that makes you someone who can share your faith, because all of us are called to share our faith, and actually that's a whole other story. I'm just saying, if we want to be evangelisers, if we want to be an evangelising parish and evangelising diocese, what are some of the attitudes of heart that we need? And 4, just to share 4 in this session. The first attitude of the heart is desire. Desire. And I'm going to use a lot of platitudes, truisms, cliches, because sometimes they're helpful. Yes, here's the first truism. You can't evangelise if you don't want to. You can't evangelise if you don't want to. It might sound a bit banal, but it's actually true, and we sometimes forget to ask it, to challenge ourselves by it. Because I'm going to say something very bluntly, and there is no judgment in this at all, really. I think being factual and statistical, most Catholics do not have a heart for evangelisation. I'm not saying good and bad, but just the desire to share the faith with others and bring them to live and appreciate this wonderful faith, it is not on the heart of most Catholics, I think. Because even many who love the faith personally, even many who love the Lord and who love the faith and who are great saints and will go straight to heaven much quicker than you and I, very often people don't believe in the importance of sharing that faith with others. And not to analyse this, in fact, this is one of the chapters in my booklet trying to think about this a little bit. But why is that? That the most committed, devout, holy, passionate for the gospel person is often held back from the sharing. And I think, just very quickly, for some there is a kind of false humility. Understandable, but false. Not wanting to impose. It's almost a very English thing, you know. We don't. It's nice for me, but I'm not going to impose. I'm not going to talk about religion, sex, or politics in public, let alone with anyone that I actually know and care for. So a humility, a reticence. For some, there's a subtle kind of relativism. The culture telling us, and me believing, well, this is important for me, but maybe it's not important for others. Everyone has their own ways. We're all holding different parts of the elephant. You know this picture, yes? I'm holding the trunk, you're holding the big toe. It's all the same, really. Or even, a little bit in the background, there's a misguided theology, I think, that's come in to some of our ways of thinking, of a misguided theology of Christ, of salvation, of the gift of the church, of thinking that because God loves everyone all the time, which he does, okay, he does, but because he loves everyone all the time, he doesn't want us to share his gifts with others, or to know the love of Jesus, or to know the healing of the sacraments, or to know the message of the gospel. Do you see the false step there? He loves everyone all the time. He's working in people's lives all the time. And, not but, and he longs for people to know the Lord and to know the gospel and to know the sacraments and to be welcomed into the faith of the church. To help people to know his love even more and to help his love to transform their lives even more as it has our own lives. So this is in the background, and this isn't my topic, but just there's a reticence, there's a lack of desire and longing for evangelisation in many people. Just another statistical aspect on this, a recent report from the 1970 British cohort study, this was reported in all the secular press last week, tracking people's lives, including their faith, from the year 1970 onwards, discovering that the majority of the population are atheist or agnostic in this country, that Muslims have by far the strongest faith of religious people in modern Britain, with Christians from the smaller evangelical churches the only group coming close to the same levels of faith as Muslims. And when asked about their belief in God, their certainty about God, do you believe in God? Only 1 in 6 members of the church in England or the other main Protestant denominations say they believe in God without doubts. And of Catholics, I presume it's not just churchgoers, but baptised Catholics in this, people who self-identify as Catholics in this country, just 1/3 of Roman Catholics believe in God with certainty and clarity. 1/3. 2/3 of Catholics are not sure whether God exists. Compared with 88% of Muslims who say that he does exist, very clear, and 71% of evangelical Christians who say that they're very clear that there is a God and he exists. This is not going into deep, you know, do you believe in the teachings of the church? Do you believe that Jesus... This is just believing in God. 1/3 of Catholics. Again, I'm not criticising or judging, I'm just saying we're a mixed bunch, and we're at different levels of faith and commitment and evangelising further. So back to the positive point here, desire. Evangelisation starts when people experience or live a personal conversion. And I don't mean that they have a conversion experience at age so-and-so and say, wow, my life has changed, although that happens to many of us and it's a great gift. I mean that the faith, as children, as teenagers, as young adults, as mature adults, the faith has become real, has become personal, has become meaningful, not just something I inherit. This is my faith, this is my church, I love the Lord, I love, back to the pillars, not that someone says I love the 4 pillars of the catechism, but faith, the sacraments, the moral life and vision of the church, prayer, these matter to me. They've touched my life, they've changed my life. It's realising the gift of faith. It's those 2 wonderful parables in Matthew chapter 13. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Joy is personal, the joy. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. Finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and brought it. Interesting, doesn't talk about joy. This is a canny businessman, yeah? The first one is about joy. The second one about the pearl is about recognising the value. Knowing the value. The joy, the recognition, the value, the appreciation. The treasure, the pearl for us, is Jesus Christ. It's our Catholic faith. Again, it's not to judge anyone. It's not to deny that the Spirit can work powerfully in people's lives in different ways, in ways unknown to us. It's not to deny the goodness of others, yes? We're not sitting around judging other people as Catholics. It's simply to say, we have received a treasure of infinite value in knowing Jesus and being brought to his church. That there is a fullness and a beauty and a healing here that we've received as a sheer gift. And knowing this isn't just a gift for me. This isn't a selfish gift. God isn't selfish, and I'm not selfish. And it is not that God loves me more than others. Do you see this? The knowledge of the gift that we've received is actually the opposite of arrogance. It's realising that I'm not special. This gift is for everyone, not just for me. This amazing gift of Jesus, of our faith. And I've seen this so many times, that the parishes, the groups, the movements where evangelisation has really taken root is because people have been touched by the faith in their lives. And it's touched them personally, and they long to share it. Are we on fire for the Lord? That lovely quote from St. Catherine of Siena. If you become who you are meant to be, you will set the world on fire. If you become who you are meant to be, you will set the world on fire. Are we, the Christians we're meant to be, are we setting the world on fire? One of my favourite quotations in the Office of Readings from the writings of St. Rose of Lima, many centuries ago. And it's a short paragraph. Just listen to the passion, the longing to evangelise and to share her faith. She had a prophetic word given to her in prayer. The Lord spoke to her. And she said, "When I heard these words, a strong force came upon me and seemed to place me in the middle of a street, so that I might say in a loud voice, to people of every age, sex and status. Hear, O people, hear, O nations, I am warning you about the commandment of Christ by using words that come from his own lips. I felt as if my soul could no longer be kept in the prison of my body, but that it had burst its chains and was free and alone, and was going very swiftly through the whole world, saying, if only men would learn how great it is to possess divine grace, how beautiful, how noble, how precious, how many riches it hides within itself, how many joys and delights. If only. Her heart was exploding with love for the Lord and longing to share it. The generosity. Do we feel in our hearts, not just the Lord's love for us, but do we feel the cry to God from the hearts of other people, often very hidden? Do we feel their longing for a deeper healing and meaning in their lives? We can be very naive about this. We've got lots of friends, colleagues, family members, good people. We're not judging them, but to say everything is fine for them and they find their way and I find my way, and not to hear the profound longing, need for spiritual, moral healing, for the love of Christ, for his power in their lives. We can actually collude with a kind of complacency. And I don't mean to ram things down people's throats, to go to someone and say, you think you're happy but you're not really. You know, that's not evangelisation. But the kind of listening of the heart that can recognise and allow the real longings of someone's heart to emerge, and to be able to see that there is a longing for Christ here, a longing for God's love. I was thinking of our conference over Christmas. Just at our Christmas masses, we were singing the Christmas carols. The evangelical fervour of the Christmas carols that we sing, yeah, and we sing them, but I don't think we really believe them. I'm not going to list them all. In fact, we could have an hour just singing Christmas carols here, yeah, just like a boot camp. Stand up and sing them and actually believe them. Today a Saviour has been born for us. Come, let us adore him. Come, come, come to the manger. The whole focus of the Christmas tradition, I mean the broadest Christmas tradition, is that a Saviour has been born for us. But do we really believe that? We don't. We think, oh, a Saviour was born for me, but not for us, not for others. Jesus is the Saviour of the world. We sing this every Christmas. Do we believe it? What a difference it would make if we really believed that God had created us for a purpose, that he loves us, that he sent his Son to be with us, that through his death and resurrection he has set us free from sin and death, that he calls us to share his divine life now and to share in his glory for all eternity. If we believe that really, wouldn't we be like St. Rose of Lima, racing into the streets, calling our friends, putting this on Facebook, ringing up our relations? Wouldn't we, if we really believed it? But we sing it at Christmas, and then we go to eat the mince pies. And then we put the crib away, and that's it. Even if we wanted to be indifferent, it's harder today than 20 or 30 years ago because of our culture. I'm just thinking of working in the university environment today. I'm not saying this is the same for you in your towns and villages, because London universities is a very, very global, international world. But when I was at university many years ago, you could be a happily practicing, indifferent Catholic. Yeah? Yeah, I'm really happy, this is great for me. You have your other, oh, you're an agnostic, you're an atheist, everyone just getting along. You can't do that anymore as an 18-year-old at university, in anywhere in the UK. because people are asking profound questions to you in your hall of residence and in your course. Atheists, secularists are asking you over breakfast, over supper, how can you believe in God? Non-theists, I don't mean European atheists, I mean people from really non-theistic cultures, Buddhists from Japan, communist-educated non-theists from China, are coming to London and meeting Catholics, ordinary students, and saying, not how can you believe in God, as if they know who God is, but who is this God you believe in? Muslims, the many, many Muslim students whose faith, back to the statistics, is so much stronger than our Catholic students, are going to our Catholic students and saying, not how can you believe in God, not who is God that you believe in him, but how can you believe that this God, this one God, is a trinity of three persons? And how can you believe that Jesus, the man, is the true God, is true God? An ordinary, indifferent, lapsed, happy, on the edge, 18-year-old Catholic student from the UK is going to university and is having these questions fired at them on the first day. That's just breakfast. And then at lunch, they're being given a leaflet saying, come to the Secularist Society event this evening with free cheese and wine. Come to the Muslim Society this evening. Wonderful people, wonderful students, but with very different beliefs. You can't remain indifferent. You cannot be neutral as a Christian, as a Catholic, in the university system and probably in your own towns and villages. I'm not talking about imposing or being arrogant. I'm just saying we need to know what our faith is and what we really believe. The second attitude of heart, the first one, got a bit lost there in digression, was desire. Yeah. Do we have the desire? Do we care? The second attitude of heart is humility. Humility. Let me speak hard truths to you. Most evangelisation ends in apparent failure. I've said it. If we mean, did our church attendance go up? Did our RCIA group expand? Is the kingdom of God fully established in Lostwithiel, in Bude, in Exeter, or wherever? Probably not. Now, I don't know all these towns. Maybe it is. Maybe since the last time I went to Exeter, it has become fully established. But maybe it isn't. But there's a beauty in recognising this, because the apparent failure, the difficulties, the dead ends, the struggles, they make us realise that this is God's work, not ours. He does not ask us to convert people. That's his job, if and when he wants to do it. He just asks us to love, to share, to invite. It's quite a different task. You see, my job, the team of the parish, it's not how can we go and convert people, that's up to God. It's how can we love and share and invite. Because we are not up to the converting. We cannot proclaim ourselves, as Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, we can only proclaim Jesus Christ, and we are just slaves, servants. It's God who said, let light shine out of darkness. And interestingly, I think St. Paul here is talking about God shining out of the darkness of our own lives. Because it follows on from this. We don't proclaim ourselves. We hold a treasure, back to part 1, desire, in clay earthenware jars. And we are cracked pots at that. The extraordinary power belongs to God and not to us. This is St. Paul, 2 Corinthians 4. So it just brings us face to face with the mystery of why he chose us. Think of your village, your town. Yeah? Let's say you're from a town with 10,000 people in it. Bishop Mark telling us that the average for the diocese is 3 or 4% Catholics. So 10,000, 1,000, that means there's about 400 baptized Catholics in your town, and maybe 80, 100, 120 are going to Mass. Yes? And I'm again not judging, but you wouldn't know all of them and different levels of commitment. And when you stand up and ask the question, who has a passion for evangelisation? Who wants to join our evangelisation team next week? Yes, maybe there's a handful of people. Why you? Why us? I have no idea. You, this group, us here today, all of us, lay people, priests, bishop, we are utterly inadequate for this. Utterly. Just to say it, yes? It's like an Alcoholics Anonymous. Yes, here am I at my meeting, I'm taking the chair. I am utterly inadequate for this task of evangelising. There are people in your town, there are people who joined the seminary with me, who are far more competent. In your town, for evangelisation, there are people who are much better speakers, much more charisma, much better networkers, much more tech-savvy, younger, wiser, more beautiful. Think of all the gifts that you think you need to be good evangelisers, and other people have them in abundance, and you have very little. You are not, do you know this phrase, the Jarvis of your town? This is a sociological category. Jarvis, an acronym, is those who are young, attractive, rich, vivacious, intelligent, sexy. I'm not going to ask you to look at your neighbour. You might be near a very vivacious, sexy neighbour. The inner quality, the Jarvis factor, we are not as Catholics. Yeah? And if you take the parish photograph and put it on the newsletter, the front of the local newspaper, you might not win the Jarvis Cup. But this is good. This is good. We are earthenware vessels. The reason that you are the one there is because he's chosen you. He's chosen you as an individual. He's given you the gift of faith. He's given you, and not the holy, wonderful person next to you, a desire to evangelise. He's chosen your little parish, your community, to hold the treasure of faith. I keep saying this. It's not arrogance. It's actually humility. Who are you, your parish in your town, to hold this treasure, but he's given it to you? So let me say loud and clear, stop worrying about what you don't have. Stop worrying about the people you are not, the person you are not, the people who are not with you. You are the ones he has chosen. Again, the cliches of secular wisdom apply to us. Bloom where you are planted. Play the hand you are dealt. The perfect is the enemy of the good. This isn't the gospel, this is just common sense. But it applies to you and your parish and your inadequacies. You are the crack team Jesus has chosen for your parish. The crack team. The results are up to him. The fruits are up to him. We don't take seriously the parable of the sower. Yeah? The parable of the sower, we just concentrate on the last bit, which is about the fruit growing. Most of the parable of the sower is about wasted seed. You scatter the seed. And our task is to scatter seed. It's to not worry about the fruit. Now, the parable of the sower does help us to identify Why is some of the fruit not bearing, the seed not bearing fruit? So there is a lesson there. But it's a parable about wasted fruit, wasted seed, in order to encourage us in our scattering. There are other parables about carefully targeted seed. Yeah? The mustard seed, singular, grows into a great tree. The vine needs cultivating. The fig tree is given one last chance to water and care for it. But not the parable of the sower. That's about scattering seed, recklessly, thoughtlessly, mindlessly, knowing that some of it God will bring to bear fruit. Who will respond? This is all under the heading of humility still. We don't know before we start, but let's pray for the humility and the sensitivity to know when someone is responding. We try something. It happens accidentally, like with St Alban, or it happens because of a plan and a project in the parish, and that's wonderful. But someone unexpectedly replies, shows an interest, and we have the sensitivity of the heart to say yes, and then to welcome them and share our lives with them. This is Jesus' missionary challenge in Luke 9, for example, when he says, whatever house you enter, stay there. When you are made welcome in one house, a town of 500,000 people, but if one person in one house makes you welcome, enter there and stay there. Be grateful. Don't think about all the other people. Oh, I wanted to get 50 people in my RCIA group this year, and I've got half, meaning someone who maybe in 10 years' time might be interested and just wants a chat and a cup of coffee. But that's the person who's opened their door to you. To have the humility to let the Lord grow a tiny shoot, and when it's there, to work with that. Part of the humility as well is recognising the sacrifice, the cost of evangelisation. It is not easy. We're giving time, we're giving energy, we're coming face to face with our own personal inadequacies and fears, the inadequacies of our parish, of our lay people, of our priests, of our bishop, of our past efforts, the cost of facing that, the cost of trying something and it failing, the financial cost of investing in evangelisation rather than just maintaining, the cost to relationships sometimes. Now, don't go evangelising and ruin your marriage and family. That's not what we're called to. But the cost. So many costs to evangelising. Are we prepared for them? As Jesus says, if you intend to build a tower, don't you first sit down and estimate the cost? Now, sometimes we shouldn't do that too much, because we will be over-frightened. But just to say, this isn't going to be easy, but it's so important, and I care about it so much, and our parish needs this so much, and much more importantly, the people of our town and village need this, and much, much, much more importantly, it's what the Lord is asking us. And that's why, despite the inadequacies and the impossibilities and the costs, I'm willing to try to build the tower. Right, another little mini break. Again, just what I've been talking a lot. Just share one thought with your neighbour. Just one thought for 1 minute with your neighbour. Good, some good discussion, and you've been very attentive, and we're very near the end. So the last little bit of input for the morning. We're talking about attitudes of the heart, talked about desire and humility. The third attitude of the heart is prayer. Prayer. So just a little story. You know I'm working at the university chaplaincy, and one of the students came to talk to me. Well, he wasn't even come to talk to me. We were sitting in the in the dining room downstairs chatting, so this isn't a confidential conversation. And she said to me very humbly, so she's a student I trust very much, and she said very humbly, she said, Father Stephen, look, it's wonderful here at the chaplaincy. You know something's going to come when something. Wonderful being here. But I've just noticed, I've just had a sense that we don't pray very much. And I got all defensive and I said, what do you mean we don't pray very much? We have daily mass, we have Eucharistic adoration every day, we have the rosary, we have morning prayer, we have evening prayer, we have blah, blah, blah. She said, yeah, I know it's wonderful, Father Stephen. She said, but what I mean is that when we have problems as a community, we don't seem to pray about them together. And I said, what do you mean? I was curious, obviously, and open. And she said, well, it struck me that last week we had a mini financial crisis. We had a retreat booked. One of the funders pulled out. So it was quite a significant chunk of deposit that we couldn't pay. And so the chaplaincy team, myself and the other priest involved in the college, we went into action mode and we started planning and emailing and writing to other fundraisers, and we thought, oh no, it's all going to fall apart. And this young student, this young woman, she said, I just couldn't help noticing that we weren't praying for God's help when we needed help. And I was rebuked, I was humbled, she was right. You know? And she wasn't being critical, she was just asking a very humble question. But then we had a lovely conversation, and she said, she obviously had a heart for this, she said, in her youth group back home in another country, I won't identify her, they do a lot of evangelising work or youth work. So they would have an event where maybe they're getting 20, 30 young people, not Catholic, not Christian, to come for an event. And the team, an hour before the event when they were setting up, they would go and sit in the hall where the event was going to take place, just like you are. And they would sit down in the chair, all the team, and each team member would pray for the person who was going later on to come and sit in that chair for the evening. Yeah? And pray for that specific person and hold them to the Lord. And then, she said, the joy and the excitement and the fun of then getting the coffee ready and everything, and then people coming in and very subtly, who's in my chair? But knowing that this is real, that person was prayed for. The heart was reaching out to that person, and it's real and it's common. And it reminded me of a blog post I read this week about praying for your future spouse that you don't know yet. You've done this? Yeah? Praying for the person that, as a single person, you hope to meet one day and marry, but you haven't met yet. Now, it can get complicated. Yeah? I know, what if you don't marry? And the person writing the article was very wise. They said, you can leave that to God, because prayer is always meaningful. But just most young single people will marry. The Lord does know who that will be, and to pray for that person. The beautiful thing about intercession, like the chair, and I have done this, okay, big pause, won't let it sit there too long, not for myself. I'm very happy to say this because I've said it in public before, but when my sister was single, I used to pray for the man that one day the Lord would bring her to meet, and she's happily married now with a little 2.5-year-old and expecting their second child. And I remember meeting Mike for the first time, shaking his hand and thinking, I've been praying for you for years. God knows who that person is. God is using our prayers. The importance of prayer, the importance of intercession. Why is prayer, especially, I'm not just making generalizations about being a Christian now. Why does prayer and intercession matter for the evangelising heart? Well, just to go through the levels quickly, just to almost to give titles, not to give a big lecture about this. First, we need prayer for discernment about what to do. Even before lift-off, even before building the launching pad, what are we doing? What are we doing as a parish to evangelise? We need discernment, and we need prayerful discernment. As St. Therese says, to come before the Lord with empty hands, with an open heart. For you to say honestly, as an individual, as a priest, as a layperson, and hopefully as a team, whatever that means, but a group of people who come together because you care about evangelisation. I'm not over-structuring this, but let's just call it an evangelisation team in your parish. It might be an official team, it might be friends who care about it, it might be a group of parents, whoever it is. To be really open to the Lord and to the Holy Spirit. To pray and to have enough trust in each other that you can pray together for one another and to pray to the Holy Spirit together. Where is he leading us? Holy Spirit, where do you want to take us? What small steps, what great steps, but what small steps do you want for us? What are you saying to us? Don't let me just do what the parish next door has done. Oh, I heard a great talk about night fever. Don't let me just do night fever. Yeah? This is about the heart. And what is the Holy Spirit saying to us? The openness, the prayerfulness, the sensitivity. Thy will be done. What does the Lord want for our diocese? What does he want for our parish? The need for courage and creativity and humility again, to hear. Now, how he speaks in different ways, I don't just mean a mystical thought, a voice, that might happen, but just all the different ways that God speaks to us and the sensitivity to hear. This is why I think Jesus said to the apostles when he sent them out, take nothing with you for the journey. He didn't want them at the beginning to overplan. He didn't want them to think they knew what they needed. You don't know what you need because you don't know what God wants yet. So, openness, the Holy Spirit. The apostles and Our Lady, the early church, in the great novena of Pentecost, yes, in the upper room, they don't know what God wants to do, what he's going to do. Waiting and praying in the upper room, with hands and hearts open to the Holy Spirit. And we need prayer. I'm not going to talk about each of these levels, but just we need a prayerful heart for discernment. We need to be praying for our colleagues, our co-workers, our bishop, our priest, our deacons, our fellow lay workers in the parish, those who care about evangelisation. We need to be praying for the specific grace of evangelisation for our parishes and our diocese. It won't just happen. We need to beg God for my parish to grow in a spirit of evangelisation. We need to pray for the people of our area, of your diocese, of your parish, that they may be touched and be led to what will help them. We need to pray as we do develop plans and projects as a team who is working. You cannot just be an action team, you need to be a praying team. And then when the plan, the project, big, small, whatever it is taking place, you need a separate praying team to pray for the team that's doing the work. Yeah? This is something we've learned in our evangelisation work. We had 2 semesters of doing evangelisation projects, and I'll say a little word at the end about that. And it's this young woman that came to me to talk about intercession that is now running the prayer team, that sits in the chapel praying for those who are coming on our evangelisation course. Beautiful. Prayer. A praying heart, a prayerful heart. And the last inner attitude that we need is friendship. Friendship. again, at all these levels of the mission, the work, friendship of those who are involved in evangelisation. Yourselves. Again, not formal team, but just people you know. Neighbours, friends, colleagues, fellow parents, fellow grandparents, or a team. An evangelisation team, yourself working with the priests and the deacons. Friendship. Meaning, loving, trusting relationships that can share the concerns, the prayer, the life, the work. The friendship that will allow you and the Holy Spirit to do something that's bigger than yourself. This is part of the point of friendship. And actually, the great moments of evangelisation in the history of the church, and especially in our own country, have grown out of communities of friendship. Think of the missionary communities that have shaped our church, the missionary congregations. St. Augustine coming from Rome in 597. The Jesuit and the seminary communities that formed the priests that came to minister to the people in the times of the Reformation. Our own great, historic, homegrown missionary society, I'm sure there's many more, but the one that I know well from Westminster, the Mill Hill Fathers. A profound part of the church's history of mission in North London, growing together in friendship. Monastic friendship. The models of St. Boniface. He didn't go to the Germanic peoples alone, did he? He went with a monastic community. Communities of men and women. And then his missionary plan was to set up communities of friendship, out of which could grow the Christian faith. And the movements and ecclesial realities of the contemporary church. Very random examples. I'm not picking favourites, I just happen to think of these sitting with my notes. The neo-catechumenic communities, the Zion evangelisation community, Youth 2000 that I've been involved with for many years, St. Patrick's Evangelisation School in central London. And again, the traditional communities, I would call them evangelising communities in a different way. The Legion of Mary, the St. Vincent de Paul societies. These are communities of friendship that allow the mission to take place. Mark chapter 6. Jesus called the 12. He sent them out 2 by 2. And then he said to them, whichever house you enter, stay there. Friendship. The friendship of the 12. The friendship of 2 by 2, never evangelising alone. The friendship with those people that you are going out to meet. Don't just knock on the door, give them a timetable of masses at your church and leave. Enter the house, whatever that means symbolically. Enter into someone's life, enter into relationships. So the friendship, above all, doesn't mean the friendship of the evangelising community. It means the friendship that we are wanting and longing and prepared to have with those that we want to share our faith with. We have to have a genuine love for the people that we meet, the people of our towns and schools and shopping centres and neighbourhood. I can't just say, I want to give you the gospel, I want you to come to my church, but I'm not interested in your life, in your concerns, in your joys and in your problems. That's actually a sort of spiritual prostitution. Yeah? I want one thing out of you, but I'm not interested in your real life for the rest of your life. And then, the real friendship, whatever form that takes, is to welcome them into the friendship of the church. I don't mean necessarily one particular group of friends, because there's a danger there that can become cliquey. I don't mean that. It's good we have communities of friends. but I mean to bring them into the communion, the community, the communion, the friendship of Christ's church. To make them welcome. To make them know that they are wanted and loved as they are, unconditionally, and because of who the Lord is calling them to be. Is it true that our parishes and our dioceses are places of warmth and welcome and love? Really, in the concrete experience of those who meet us as Catholics and who cross the threshold of our parish doors and our community centres. This is a great challenge and reality that Alpha has taught me. Yeah? I'll just say something about this at the end. But when I heard someone giving a talk about Alpha, they said, one of the unsettling things about Alpha is, if you have a wonderful meal and discussion, at the end of that, you've got to say to them, well, come to visit our church. But after the wonderful experience of meal and community, do you really want to ask them to come and visit your church? Or are you too embarrassed about what they will meet in terms of the love and warmth and welcome from people's hearts? I don't mean that we have to be a community that has a group hug every Sunday morning, yeah? I don't mean we have to have welcomers with badges and cups of coffee at the church door. You might do that, you might not. Yes? I'm not giving a model, because actually part of the strength of Catholic tradition is that there are different ways of belonging and different kinds of communion. So we are not a small house church that only has one way of belonging. And it's quite right that some people come into our churches looking for warmth and friendship and hugs and cups of coffee and donuts, and other people want to sit on the back row of the church with their arms crossed and not talk to the priest when they walk in. Yeah? That's okay, because the church is big enough to hold everyone, but that everyone would know that they are welcomed, and if they are looking to talk, to share, to ask, they have a loving space for that. We're not imposing a model, we're asking a question. What does it mean for us to be a welcoming church? My greatest act at Newman House in 18 months, yes, the single most significant thing I've done, I believe, is in the first week to say that after Sunday evening Mass, we had this in the morning already, after every Sunday evening Mass, for as long as I'm there as chaplain, we are going to have cake and hot chocolate. That's it. Very simple. But it means there's a welcome and a warmth for those who want. And I never say to people, as I'm greeting them after church, you must come into that. Because some don't want to. I say at the end of Mass, you are very welcome if you want to. So it gives people the freedom to know. Desire, humility, prayer, friendship. It's not a comprehensive list. It's certainly not the gifts we need to be loving Christians, but it's some of the attitudes of the heart that we need if we're going to evangelise. I hope that the whole church, that your diocese, that your parishes, all of our parishes, my chaplaincy, the chaplaincy that I work in, that I'm privileged to be a part of, I hope that we can all grow in an evangelising heart. That as individuals, each one of us, in these ways, can think and pray and grow. And especially as communities. Yeah? How, as a community, can we... Do you notice what I'm saying? Not how can we evangelise. That's like the fifth question. Yeah? The really important question, and in fact it's all I've been talking about this morning, is how can we grow to have a more evangelising heart as an individual and as a community. And with that heart, don't just mean a sort of hidden, with that living heart, beating heart, with that desiring, humble, praying, loving heart, how out of that will grow the next step, which is some thought and prayer about what to do. And then, whenever the time comes, how can we work out what we're actually going to do. Because we do need to do stuff. Really, I'm not just spiritualising all this. We need to act. We need, back to the morning, to go out into the streets, like St. Francis is saying, whatever the streets symbolically means. We cannot sit there with our doors open waiting for people to come in. We need to act. But first, we need to pray to the Lord to have an evangelising heart. Thank you.